The emergency klaxons aboard the UES Pathfinder pierced through Commander Sarah Chen's meditation, yanking her back to reality. Her quarter's holographic display flashed red as Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the ship-wide comm. Multiple unknown contacts detected dropping out of FTL. All hands to battle stations. Chen was already moving, muscle memory from countless drills guiding her through the dimly lit corridors toward the bridge. The Pathfinder, humanity's most advanced deep space research vessel, wasn't designed for combat. But after decades of expansion into the stars, the United Earth government had learned to prepare for the unexpected. Status report. Chen barked as she entered the bridge, her crew working with practiced efficiency at their stations. 15 vessels, Commander. Largest is approximately 3 kilometers in length. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database, Rodriguez reported, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. They're advancing in attack formation. Chen's throat tightened. Humanity had discovered ruins and artifacts from long-dead civilizations during their expansion, but never encountered another spacefaring species. Until now. Open all frequencies, first contact protocols, she ordered, even as her instincts screamed that these weren't peaceful visitors. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Pathfinder. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic. The ship rocked violently as energy weapons unlike anything humanity had encountered lanced through space. The Pathfinder's shields, designed to defend against micrometeorites and solar radiation, might as well have been tissue paper. Direct hits to engines and weapons systems. The damage control officer shouted. Shield generators are offline. Chen gripped her command chair as more impacts threatened to tear the ship apart. Launch emergency, boys. All hands to escape pods. Get word back to Earth that we're under attack. The bridge crew hesitated for just a moment before following her orders. They all knew what launching the emergency buoys meant. It was an admission that the Pathfinder wouldn't survive this encounter. As her crew evacuated, Chen transmitted one final message on all frequencies. This is Commander Chen to unknown vessels. You've attacked without provocation or warning. Remember this day, you didn't just attack a ship, you attacked humanity. And humanity doesn't negotiate with empires that strike from the shadows. We eliminate them. The Pathfinder's destruction was just the beginning. Within hours, similar scenes played out across humanity's colonial frontier. The unknown aliens, who would later identify themselves as the Nexarians, struck with brutal efficiency, targeting military installations, shipyards, and communication relays. Back on Earth, the United Earth Defense Council convened an emergency session as reports of the attacks flooded in. Admiral James Santos, his normally pristine uniform showing signs of a hasty departure from the Luna Command Center, addressed the grim-faced assembly. The attacks are coordinated and systematic, he reported, gesturing to a holographic display showing humanity's territory, with red markers indicating confirmed attack sites. They're attempting to isolate our colonies and prevent any organized response. But they've made a crucial mistake. And what mistake would that be, Admiral? Asked Council President Maria Wagner, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. Santos's weathered face hardened. They think this is a war of technology and firepower. But humanity's greatest weapon has always been our ability to adapt, to think differently, to turn disadvantage into advantage. They expect us to either submit or fight conventionally. We'll do neither. In the weeks that followed, the Nexarians' technological superiority became painfully clear. Their ships could traverse vast distances faster than humanity's best vessels. Their weapons could penetrate Earth's most advanced shields. Their armor seemed impervious to conventional attacks. But as the initial shock wore off, humanity began to show why they had survived countless near-extinction events throughout their history. In underground facilities across Earth and the surviving colonies, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to understand and counter Nexarian technology. Dr. Maya Patel, a quantum physicist at the Geneva Research Institute, made the first breakthrough. Studying debris from destroyed Nexarian vessels, she discovered something extraordinary about their technological foundation. Their entire civilization is built on absolute precision, she explained to the Defense Council. Their FTL drives, their weapons, their shields, everything operates on perfectly calibrated quantum frequencies. It's incredibly efficient, but it's also predictable. And anything predictable can be disrupted. While the Nexarians pushed deeper into human space, humanity began to change the rules of engagement. Traditional military doctrine was abandoned in favor of asymmetric warfare. Ships began using improvised tactics that the Nexarians' advanced targeting systems couldn't predict. Colonial militias developed guerrilla strategies that turned their world's harsh environments against the invaders. The first major human victory came 3 months after the initial attack. The colony on Titan, using the moon's dense atmosphere and magnetic field to mask their movements, launched a seemingly suicidal charge at a Nexarian battle group. But instead of conventional weapons, they deployed devices that Dr. Patel's team had developed, quantum frequency disruptors that turned the Nexarians' own technological precision against them. The result was devastating. The alien ships, their systems thrown into chaos by the disruption of their quantum-precise operations, were unable to maintain their structural integrity. 3 capital ships and their escorts were destroyed without a single direct hit. As news of the victory spread, humanity's resistance stiffened. The Nexarians had expected to find an inferior species that would quickly submit to their superior technology. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that refused to fight by the established rules of warfare, an enemy that turned their own strengths into weaknesses. Commander Chen, who had survived the Pathfinder's destruction along with a handful of her crew, would later write in her memoirs, "The Nexarians thought their advanced technology made them invincible. They never understood that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our ships or our guns. It's our refusal to accept defeat, our ability to find ways to fight back even when all hope seems lost. They came expecting to find primitives. They found instead a species that had spent its entire existence learning to overcome superior opponents." The war was far from over, but the message was clear. Humanity wouldn't bow to threats or superior technology. When empires demanded talks, Earth answered with obliteration. The Nexarians were about to learn why countless threats throughout history had failed to subjugate humanity. Because humans don't just fight wars, they rewrite the rules of engagement until victory is the only possible outcome. Dr. Maya Patel stood in the depths of the Geneva Research Institute's underground facility, her tired eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The image showed a side-by-side comparison of human and Nexarian neural patterns, recorded from captured combat footage and salvaged biotechnology. "Play it again," she instructed her AI assistant. "Focus on the response times during unexpected situations." The display flickered, showing a battle sequence where human forces had employed completely unorthodox tactics, using mining equipment as weapons, deliberately triggering geological events, even turning their own ship's destruction into tactical advantages. Each time, the Nexarian responses showed a clear pattern. "They're too perfect," Dr. Patel muttered, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "Their neural processes are like quantum computers, incredibly fast and efficient, but only within established parameters." Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Chen, looked up from his own analysis. "And that's different from humans how?" "Look at our neural patterns during the same scenarios," she replied, gesturing to the display. "They're chaotic, seemingly random, but there's something beautiful happening in that chaos. We're not just thinking outside the box, we're questioning whether the box needs to exist at all." The discovery sparked a revolution in humanity's resistance strategy. While the Nexarians possessed technology that could process information at speeds humans could only dream of, they lacked humanity's talent for innovative thinking and adaptability. Their minds, like their technology, operated on precise, predetermined patterns. In a secure bunker beneath what remained of Singapore, Admiral Santos reviewed Dr. Patel's findings with Earth's remaining military leadership. So you're telling me their biggest weakness is their own perfection? Exactly. Dr. Patel's hologram nodded. Their neural architecture is optimized for efficiency, but it makes them predictable. They can execute complex strategies flawlessly, but they struggle to improvise or think creatively. Every human child playing with blocks shows more creative problem-solving ability than their most advanced tactical eye. Colonel Sarah Chen, promoted after her escape from the Pathfinder, leaned forward. How do we weaponize this? We already are. Dr. Patel smiled. Every irrational tactic we've successfully used against them proves my theory. They can't effectively counter what they can't predict, and they can't predict what doesn't follow their logical patterns. The implications transformed humanity's resistance efforts. Instead of trying to match the Nexarians' technological superiority, human forces began exploiting their cognitive advantages. Training programs were revised to emphasize creative problem-solving and unconventional thinking. Military doctrine was rewritten to prioritize unpredictability over efficiency. On Mars, Colonel Chen led the first large-scale implementation of these new strategies. Instead of defending key installations with traditional methods, she scattered her forces across the planet's harsh terrain. Small teams, equipped with minimal technology but maximum autonomy, began conducting operations that defied conventional military logic. They triggered dust storms to blind Nexarian sensors, used the planet's natural magnetic fields to disrupt enemy communications, and even manipulated temperature differentials to create weapons out of the environment itself. The Nexarians, unable to discern any logical pattern in these attacks, found their superior technology increasingly ineffective. Status report, Chen demanded, standing in her makeshift command center carved into Olympus Mons. The Nexarians are withdrawing from the Valles Marineris sector, her tactical officer reported with a grin. They lost 3 capital ships trying to predict where we'd strike next. They never figured out we were using random number generators to choose our targets. Chen allowed herself a small smile. They expect us to behave like them, to follow logical patterns and established military doctrine. They don't understand that humans thrive on chaos. The success on Mars inspired similar operations across human space. Colonial militias began using their intimate knowledge of their world's environments to create strategies that seemed insane by conventional standards. On Europa, ice miners converted their drilling equipment into weapons that could strike from beneath the frozen surface. In the asteroid belts, prospectors turned their navigation skills into hit-and-run tactics that frustrated Nexarian patrol fleets. But perhaps the most significant advantage came from humanity's ability to learn and adapt. While the Nexarians remained bound by their rigid thinking patterns, humans continuously evolved their strategies. Each victory, each defeat, each unexpected outcome became a lesson that was quickly shared and incorporated into new approaches. Dr. Patel's team made another crucial discovery while studying captured Nexarian databases. Their entire society is built on hierarchy and predetermined roles, she explained to the Defense Council. They can't comprehend a species that allows, even encourages, individual initiative and creativity. Every time one of our units acts independently, it forces their entire command structure to pause and recalculate. This insight led to Operation Chaos Theory, a coordinated campaign designed to exploit the Nexarians' rigid thinking. Instead of trying to defeat their forces directly, human resistance cells focused on creating situations that forced them to deal with multiple unpredictable variables simultaneously. In the skies above Luna, a perfect example of this strategy unfolded. A small fleet of human ships, led by the newly commissioned UES Pathfinder I, engaged a superior Nexarian force. Instead of fighting conventionally, each human vessel operated independently, following random patterns generated by quantum fluctuations. The Nexarians, unable to discern any logical strategy, found their advanced targeting systems and battle algorithms worse than useless. They're trying to find patterns that don't exist, Colonel Chen observed from the Pathfinder whose bridge. Their perfect efficiency has become their perfect weakness. As the battle ended in another human victory, Chen recorded a message for Earth's resistance networks. The Nexarians thought their technological superiority made them invincible, but they never understood that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our beautiful, wonderful imperfection. Our chaos is our advantage. Our creativity is our weapon. And our ability to embrace the unexpected will be their downfall. The war was far from over, but humanity had found its edge. In their quest for perfection, the Nexarians had sacrificed the very traits that made humans so formidable: adaptability, creativity, and the ability to find opportunity in chaos. Now, as the resistance gathered strength, they would learn why challenging humanity's survival was their greatest mistake. Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, in a vast complex carved from ancient rock, Operation Hydra was taking shape. What had begun as scattered resistance cells was transforming into a coordinated global network, each group maintaining its independence while contributing to a larger strategy that the Nexarians couldn't predict. Captain Aisha Rahman stood before a holographic map of Earth and its colonies, surrounded by representatives from different resistance groups. Her artificial eye, a reminder of her narrow escape from the fall of New Delhi, scanned the assembled leaders. "The Nexarians expect us to eventually centralize our command structure," she began, her voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. "They're waiting for us to form a traditional military hierarchy that they can understand and target. That's exactly why we won't." The map zoomed in on various locations where resistance cells had achieved significant victories. Each of your groups has developed unique methods of fighting back. The Australian outback teams use the desert itself as a weapon. The Siberian cells have turned the cold to their advantage. The Amazon groups have mastered biological warfare using Earth's own ecosystems. She gestured to Dr. Patel, who had joined them via quantum-encrypted hologram. "Our latest analysis confirms that the Nexarians' command structure becomes increasingly unstable when faced with multiple unrelated threats. They can't process the chaos we create when we all act independently but simultaneously." The resistance leaders nodded in understanding. They had all seen how their enemies struggled when confronted with humanity's unpredictable nature. But Raman wasn't finished. "Today, we launch the next phase. Operation Hydra isn't just about fighting back. It's about evolving faster than they can adapt. Cut off one head, 2 more grow back, each thinking differently than the last." In orbit, the first phase of Operation Hydra was already underway. Commander Elena Torres watched from her stealth observation post as a Nexarian patrol fleet passed through the L4 Lagrange point. The aliens had established regular patrol patterns, their precision and efficiency making them perfectly predictable. "Just like clockwork," Torres muttered, sending the signal that would unleash chaos. Across the solar system, dozens of seemingly unrelated events began simultaneously. A series of explosions in the Martian mines released clouds of magnetically charged dust into space. A malfunction in Europa's ice drilling platforms sent vibrations through space that played havoc with Nexarian sensors. Asteroids that had been secretly hollowed out and fitted with primitive but effective drives began moving in patterns that defied orbital mechanics. The Nexarian fleet's response was exactly what humanity had predicted. They attempted to analyze and respond to each threat according to their established protocols. But there were no protocols for this level of orchestrated chaos. Meanwhile, on Earth, the ground war entered a new phase. In the ruins of major cities, resistance cells put Dr. Patel's latest innovation to use. The quantum frequency disruptors that had proven so effective in space had been miniaturized and modified to target Nexarian ground forces. In what remained of London, Major Thomas Chen, no relation to Colonel Chen, led his team through the underground tunnels that honeycombed the city. Each member carried what looked like crude, homebrew weapons, because that's exactly what they were. "Remember," he whispered to his team, "these weapons aren't precise. They're not meant to be. The more random the frequency fluctuations, the better they work." Above them, Nexarian patrol units moved with mechanical precision through the streets. Their sensors, capable of detecting the slightest anomaly, were calibrated to look for known threats. They weren't prepared for what came next. Chen's team activated their devices simultaneously. The air itself seemed to shimmer as overlapping waves of quantum disruption spread through the area. The effect on the Nexarian forces was immediate and devastating. Their highly advanced armor, dependent on precise quantum field manipulation, began to malfunction in unpredictable ways. Some units found their weapons wouldn't fire. Others lost control of their movement systems. A few simply shut down completely. The precision they relied on had become their greatest vulnerability. But the resistance didn't stop there. As the Nexarians struggled to respond to this new threat, other cells put different plans into action. In the American Midwest, farmers-turned-warriors used modified agricultural equipment to generate electromagnetic pulses that played havoc with Nexarian communications. In the South Pacific, oceanographic research stations repurposed their equipment to create underwater sonic weapons that the aliens couldn't counter. Each resistance cell operated independently, using whatever resources they had available, yet all contributed to the larger chaos that Operation Hydra was designed to create. The Nexarians couldn't adapt because there was no single strategy to adapt to. Back in the Himalayan Command Center, Captain Raman received reports of the operation's progress. "They're trying to find a pattern," she observed, watching the Nexarian forces' increasingly erratic responses. "They still don't understand that the pattern is that there is no pattern." Dr. Patel's hologram nodded in agreement. Their entire civilization is built on the assumption that advanced intelligence must follow logical, predictable patterns. The idea that a species could be both technologically advanced and embrace chaos is completely foreign to them. "That's why we'll win," Raman stated with quiet confidence. "Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we're willing to be what they can't understand, unpredictable, adaptable, and absolutely comfortable with chaos." As Operation Hydra unfolded across Earth and the colonies, the Nexarians began to show the first signs of genuine confusion. Their attacks became less coordinated, their responses more hesitant. For the first time since the invasion began, they were facing an enemy that didn't just resist their superior technology, but turned their own perfectionism against them. In her private moments, Raman sometimes wondered if the Nexarians could comprehend the irony of their situation. They had attacked Earth expecting to find a primitive species that would quickly submit to their superior technology. Instead, they found humanity, a species that had evolved not despite chaos, but because of it, a species that had turned adaptation into an art form. Operation Hydra wasn't just a military strategy. It was a demonstration of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn apparent weakness into overwhelming advantage. As the resistance grew stronger and more unpredictable, the Nexarians would learn that trying to impose order on humanity was like trying to cage a storm, not just futile, but dangerous to those who attempted it. Admiral James Santos stood in the holographic war room beneath Cheyenne Mountain, watching as Operation Phantom took shape across three-dimensional representations of Earth and its colonies. Around him, dozens of officers coordinated what might be humanity's most ambitious psychological warfare campaign. "Show me the Phantom Fleet deployments," he ordered. The display shifted, revealing clusters of dots representing the carefully orchestrated deception that humanity had spent months preparing. What the Nexarians saw as human fleet movements were actually an intricate dance of drones, holographic projections, and repurposed civilian vessels. Each fleet was designed to appear far more powerful than it actually was, creating the illusion of a massive human armada that didn't exist. Dr. Maya Patel's voice came through the quantum-encrypted communication system. "The latest analysis confirms our theory, Admiral. The Nexarians' rigid thinking makes them surprisingly vulnerable to deception. They trust their sensors implicitly. If we can fool the sensors, we can fool their entire command structure." Santos nodded, watching as another Phantom fleet materialized near Jupiter. "How are they responding?" "Exactly as predicted. Dr. Paddle replied. "They're diverting significant forces to counter our non-existent threats. Their need for absolute certainty means they can't ignore any potential threat, even if they suspect it might be false." The plan had been inspired by an ancient Earth strategy, the British Army's Operation Fortitude during World War I. But humanity had taken the concept of military deception to unprecedented levels. Every resistance cell, every surviving human settlement, had become part of an elaborate web of misinformation designed to make humanity appear far more numerous and well-armed than they actually were. In the asteroid belt, Colonel Sarah Chen commanded one of the few real combat groups, using the Phantom fleets as cover for precise strikes against Nexarian supply lines. Her ships darted between the rocks, appearing to be part of a much larger force, thanks to carefully coordinated sensor ghosts and decoy vessels. "Status of Operation Mirror," she demanded, watching as her small fleet prepared for another raid. "The Nexarians have committed 3 battle groups to chase our Phantoms in the outer system," her tactical officer reported. "They're spreading themselves thin, trying to contain what they think is a major offensive." Chen allowed herself a grim smile. The Nexarians' perfect, predictable tactics had become a perfect trap. Their inability to ignore potential threats meant they had to respond to every Phantom fleet, every false signal, every staged communication they detected. Meanwhile, on Earth, the ground war had evolved into something the Nexarians couldn't comprehend. Resistance cells had turned urban warfare into a form of deadly theater. Holographic projectors salvaged from entertainment centers created phantom armies that drew Nexarian forces into elaborate ambushes. Civilian broadcasting equipment was repurposed to flood their communications with false intelligence. In what remained of Shanghai, Major Lai Wei led one such deception operation. His team had spent weeks setting up a network of sonic projectors throughout the ruins, creating the impression of a massive human force moving through the city. "Begin Sequence Alpha," he ordered. The ruins came alive with the sounds of human military activity. Vehicle movements, communication chatter, weapon signatures, all carefully crafted to trigger Nexarian combat protocols. As expected, the alien forces responded with overwhelming force, deploying significant resources to counter the non-existent threat. While they were occupied, actual resistance fighters struck at their now vulnerable supply lines and command centers. "They still haven't figured it out," Lai reported to command. "Their perfect sensors are detecting exactly what we want them to detect, and their perfect minds can't accept that their perfect sensors might be lying to them." The deception extended beyond military operations. Dr. Patel's team had discovered that the Nexarians' communication systems were vulnerable to a unique form of information warfare. Their precise, quantum-based networks couldn't easily distinguish between real and artificially generated data if both followed their expected patterns. "We're not just fooling their sensors," Dr. Paddle explained during a briefing. "We're feeding their entire civilization false information about humanity. Every time they think they've figured out our capabilities or strategy, we show them something completely different." The psychological impact on the Nexarians was becoming evident. Their attacks grew increasingly hesitant as they struggled to determine what was real and what was deception. Their perfect coordination began to break down as different command units received conflicting information and couldn't determine which reports to trust. Admiral Santos watched as another Phantom fleet appeared near Saturn, drawing Nexarian forces away from their actual targets. "How long before they adapt?" he asked Dr. Patel. "That's the beauty of it," she replied. "Their neural architecture makes it almost impossible for them to adapt to this kind of warfare. They can't embrace uncertainty the way we can. Every false signal, every Phantom fleet, every piece of contradictory information forces them to pause and recalculate." The strategy was working better than anyone had dared hope. The Nexarians, who had arrived expecting to easily subjugate a technologically inferior species, found themselves fighting shadows. Their superior technology, designed for perfect efficiency in conventional warfare, proved increasingly useless against an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. In her lab deep beneath Geneva, Dr. Paddle reviewed the latest psychological analysis of Nexarian command communications. They're starting to fear us, she realized. Not because of our strength, but because they can't understand us. We've become the ghost in their perfect machine. The resistance leaders had learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to embrace chaos and uncertainty. While the Nexarians sought perfect information and absolute certainty, humans had turned deception into an art form. As Operation Phantom continued to unfold across the solar system, humanity's message to the Nexarians became clear. In a war against humans, nothing could be trusted, nothing was certain, and perfect logic was a perfect weakness. The empire that had fought to subjugate Earth was learning that they had invaded not just a planet, but a species that had turned uncertainty itself into a weapon. The quantum encrypted message reached Admiral Santos' war room at exactly the moment Dr. Patel had predicted it would. The Nexarians' perfect timing, once their greatest strength, had become almost laughably predictable. They're requesting a diplomatic channel, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his voice carrying a hint of disbelief. The message is coming directly from their Supreme Command. Santos exchanged glances with Colonel Chen and Captain Raman, who had gathered for what they all knew would be the decisive phase of the war. After months of psychological warfare, guerrilla tactics, and carefully orchestrated chaos, the Nexarians had finally reached their breaking point. Put it through, Santos ordered, but implement protocol uncertainty. The holographic display flickered, revealing the first clear image of the Nexarian Supreme Commander humanity had ever seen. The alien's crystalline features and geometrically perfect posture reflected their species' obsession with precision. When it spoke, its words were translated with mechanical perfection. We seek to negotiate terms for the cessation of hostilities, the Supreme Commander stated. Our analysis indicates that continued conflict would be suboptimal. Santos allowed himself a small smile. Suboptimal was perhaps the greatest understatement in military history. The Nexarians' once mighty invasion force had been reduced to a fraction of its original strength, not through direct combat, but through an endless series of phantom engagements, false signals, and impossible scenarios that their perfect minds couldn't process. But humanity's leaders had prepared for this moment. The response Santos gave had been carefully crafted by Dr. Patel's team to exploit the Nexarians' rigid thinking one final time. We acknowledge your request, Santos replied, but you should know that what you've faced so far has been only a small fraction of humanity's actual capabilities. Everything you think you know about us is wrong. The Supreme Commander's crystalline features shifted in what might have been confusion. Our analysis of your species' technological level and military capabilities is fundamentally flawed, Dr. Paddle interrupted, stepping into view. You see, everything we've done, every tactic, every phantom fleet, every impossible scenario, has been part of a larger experiment. We needed to understand how your minds work, how your perfect logic responds to imperfect situations. It wasn't entirely a lie. Humanity had indeed learned enormous amounts about their enemies through their resistance campaign. But the implication that it had all been part of some grand strategic plan was exactly the kind of ordered thinking that the Nexarians would be compelled to accept. That is not possible, the Supreme Commander stated, but there was a new uncertainty in its voice. Our analysis. Your analysis is based on the assumption that advanced civilizations must follow logical, predictable patterns, Chen interjected. That's why you can't defeat us. We've evolved beyond the need for perfect order. Chaos is our natural state. The holographic image flickered as the Supreme Commander processed this information. In the background, other Nexarian commanders could be seen conferring urgently, their perfect composure showing cracks for the first time. Raman stepped forward. You have two options. Continue this war, knowing that what you've seen is only a fraction of our capabilities, and knowing that every moment of delay gives us more time to analyze and counter your perfect systems, or accept our terms. Your terms. The Supreme Commander's voice carried a hint of what might have been fear. Santos nodded to Dr. Patel, who activated a hidden command sequence. Across the solar system, hundreds of phantom fleets suddenly appeared simultaneously, each displaying power signatures far beyond anything the humans had previously revealed. It was their greatest deception yet, a massive show of force using every trick and technique they had developed throughout the war. Immediate withdrawal from Earth space, Santos stated. Recognition of human sovereignty over all our current and future territories. And most importantly, the sharing of your quantum technology, not as a gift from superiors to primitives, but as equals. The Supreme Commander's response was instant, exactly as they had predicted. You would demand our most advanced technology. That is not acceptable. Our analysis indicates. Your analysis is wrong again, Dr. Patel interrupted. We don't need your technology. We've already begun to surpass it. What we want is to understand it, to see how it can be improved by adding a touch of human chaos to its perfect order. To demonstrate her point, she transmitted data from her latest experiments, showing how human scientists had already begun to improve upon salvaged Nexarian technology by introducing controlled elements of uncertainty into their quantum systems. The effect on the Nexarian command was profound. The idea that their perfect technology could be improved by making it less perfect violated everything they believed about progress and civilization. Yet the evidence was undeniable. You have 1 hour to accept our terms, Santos stated. After that, we launch our real counteroffensive. He gestured, and the phantom fleets began moving in complex, unpredictable patterns that the Nexarians' combat computers couldn't analyze. The Supreme Commander's image flickered again, its perfect posture showing signs of stress. We accept your terms. As the transmission ended, humanity's leaders allowed themselves to relax slightly. Their greatest gamble had paid off. The Nexarians' perfect, predictable minds had been unable to accept the possibility that they had fundamentally misunderstood their opponents from the beginning. Do you think they'll ever realize, Chen asked quietly, that this was our real strength all along? Not our technology or our numbers, but our ability to make them doubt their own perfection. Dr. Patel shook her head. Their minds don't work that way. They'll analyze this conflict for centuries, trying to find the perfect logical pattern that explains their defeat. They'll never understand that the pattern was that there was no pattern. As humanity began the process of rebuilding, the legend of their victory spread across the galaxy. The species that had turned chaos into a weapon, that had defeated a superior force not through strength, but through unpredictability, became known throughout the cosmos. Other empires, hearing the tale, fought twice before threatening Earth. For humanity had proven once, and for all that true strength lies not in perfect order, but in the ability to embrace chaos, to adapt, to turn apparent weakness into unexpected strength. When empires demanded talks, Earth answered with obliteration, not through superior force, but through the perfect application of imperfection. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.